The Georgia Bulldogs and their #2 defense in the country are in South Florida on the practice field getting ready for that semifinal showdown with Michigan in the Orange Bowl. UGA is a 7.5-point favorite over the Wolverines and looking for redemption after coming up well short against Alabama in the SEC title game. Now, we mentioned that #2 defense. Well, they're #1 in fewest points allowed per game. There's Georgia, 9.5 points allowed. That is all, but Michigan right there as well in that top 10, which is 16.1. Cincinnati right behind Michigan there in the top 5. So with that, CBS Sports college football writer Barrett Sallee is here now with a preview of this game. That Georgia defense humbled in the SEC championship game. Linebacker Nakobe Dean said afterwards they had a lot to work on. What do you think they learned from that loss?
Well, I think they learned not to get too creative. Nakobe Dean, a lot of those Georgia defensive players have been talking all month about how they went into that game and were doing things a little bit more fancy than they had in in previous games. And I think maybe that stage got to them a little bit. They felt like they had to prove a point, or they wanted to prove a point for some reason, and obviously it backfired on them. So I think they'll get back to the basics. They'll get back to what they did before, not open the playbook for no reason whatsoever. And I think it's a great matchup to do that against Michigan, because I don't think they're as threatened by Michigan's offense as they were Alabama's offense. So I just think keeping it simple, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I think that's what they got to do. I think Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart know that, so I expect a little bit more of what we saw for the first 12 games, not what we saw in Game 13.
Yeah, Bryce Young certainly a much different quarterback there at Alabama than what they're going to see in Michigan. Now, speaking about quarterbacks, walk-on QB Stetson Bennett has been questioned throughout the season, but OC Todd Monken said he could win a title with Bennett. As the former walk-on, does he have a shot at beating Michigan? And, oh, by the way, that defense with a ton of talent up front.
Yeah, they have a ton of talent. It's going to be on the offensive line, I think, to protect Stetson Bennett. But, yeah, I mean, again, this is a game that fits what Georgia likes to do. So Stetson is not going to be in a position like he was in the SEC championship game where he's got to put pressure on himself. He's got to take risks in order to stay in the game. So I think in this specific game, Stetson will be fine. I do think now that JT Daniels has cleared COVID protocols that you will see him sort of in the bullpen, and Kirby Smart and Todd Monken will have a quick hook on Stetson if things start to get sideways. So I think Stetson in this game, though, is going to be fine. I think the biggest test, obviously, is if they beat Michigan, what happens against Alabama, because we saw what happened last time out. You don't want to go into a game like Alabama and have to win a shootout yet again.
Certainly the quarterbacks are going to get a lot of the attention, but tell me about Georgia's front seven going up against Michigan's offensive line. Is that really the battle to watch?
Oh, for sure. Michigan, if you saw 2 weeks ago, they got awarded the Joe Moore Award, which is given to the best offensive line in the country. And quite honestly, talking to some Joe Moore Award voters, it wasn't even in doubt. Those quarterbacks, whether it's Cade McNamara or J.J. McCarthy, have been extremely well protected. And I think the evolution of that offensive line has been a big reason why you've seen Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum become real big weapons out of the backfield. With that said, I think Georgia's defensive front, that front seven, way more talented than anybody that Michigan has faced this year. So it's certainly going to be a big challenge. And I think Georgia will be motivated about what happened last time out, because that was embarrassing. They knew that, and they're going to go back to the drawing board. So it's going to be a tremendous battle between two teams that have strength versus strength in a big-time game.
If you're Michigan, who's a guy in that Bulldogs offense that may be under the radar that could potentially pose some problems?
Yeah, Darnell Washington, the big tight end. He's uncoverable. He's 6'7", about 250, and he runs like a deer. And I think Darnell Washington's the key, because they're going to focus on Brock Bowers, the second-team All-SEC or second-team All-American tight end, the true freshman out of California. Darnell Washington, lining up in two tight end sets, is going to be single covered. The problem is there's not a person on the field that can cover him. He's just a mismatch no matter who you put on him. So an under-the-radar player to keep an eye on is Darnell Washington. He was banged up at times throughout the course of the season with various injuries. Now he's back. He's gotten a chance to get healthy. Talking to some folks around that program, the bowl layoff really did him well, because he needed a little bit of a break. Too much attention on Brock Bowers. One-on-one matchups, Darnell Washington. He will eat those matchups alive.
After Michigan beat Iowa, Aiden Hutchinson said they'd been defying expectations all year. They're going to have to defy expectations again as 7.5-point underdogs in this game. So, Barrett, who do you see celebrating in Miami New Year's Eve with an Orange Bowl win and making it to that national championship game?
I think the red and black will be in South Beach. I think they'll be celebrating. They'll maybe sigh of relief, too, because I do think Michigan will cover the touchdown spread. Again, I think this game's going to be in a phone booth. These two teams like to play the same way, so you won't see many risks offensively. As a result, I think you'll see a low-scoring game, a heavyweight fight. You're not going to see them throw haymakers early. Georgia, though, has more ammunition. They got the bigger punch. And at the end of the day, you'll see Georgia swing for the fences at the very end. You might get a big play from George Pickens. You might get a big play of Brock Bowers or Darnell Washington, and they'll get out of there with a win.
All right, so you think they're coming out of there with a win, but would they get out of the national championship game with a win, whether it's Alabama or Cinderella, Cincinnati?
Well, if it's Cinderella, for sure, by 3 touchdowns. If it's Alabama, yeah, I still think they do. I think, again, that defense for Georgia understands now how to attack Alabama. And it's always tough to beat a team twice in the same season, and especially for a losing team that got embarrassed, because they can go back and see what went wrong and see how Alabama exploited their weaknesses. So I think for Georgia, self-scouting is going to be huge. That staff is big enough and experienced enough where they did a lot of that no matter who they play in the national championship, Cincinnati or Alabama. That's what a bowl break does for a team with a giant support staff. So I think Georgia will self-scout, they'll reflect, they'll keep it simple, and they will beat Alabama in the national championship game.
All right, there you have it, Barrett Sallee. Thank you so much for joining us and those picks. He's got Georgia over Bama in the national title game again. New Year's Eve, December 31st. It's a big one. Alabama versus Cincinnati, 1-4 in the Cotton Bowl there in Arlington, Texas. That's getting off to a 3:30 start Eastern time. Then the primetime Michigan-Georgia matchup, 7:30 at the Orange Bowl in Miami Gardens at Hard Rock Stadium. Now, Cover 3, it's more than just a defense. Check out the Cover 3 podcast with Chip Patterson and Bart Simmons for the latest news.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.